The planet Leora was a place unlike any other in the universe. It floated quietly in the vastness of the Andromeda Galaxy, far away from Earth and everything humans knew. The people who lived there, called the Valens, were peaceful beings. They spent their days creating art, studying the stars, and learning about the mysteries of life. For centuries, they had no enemies, no wars, and no reason to fear anything beyond their borders. Their world was calm, beautiful, and full of wonder, but that peace did not last forever. One day, without warning, ships appeared in the sky above Leora's outer colonies. These ships belonged to the Krylos Dominion, a group of warriors from a nearby star system. The Krylos were not like the Valens. They were fierce, cruel, and hungry for power. They attacked quickly, destroying buildings, stealing resources, and capturing anyone who tried to stand against them. The Valens, who had never fought a war in their history, were completely unprepared. Their defenses crumbled under the Krylos. Advanced weapons and ruthless tactics. Desperate for help, the Valens sent out a message into the depths of space. It was a plea for aid, a cry for anyone to come and save them from the invaders. They didn't know if anyone would hear it or care enough to respond. All they could do was hope, thousands of light years away. On a small blue planet called Earth, a man named William Carter sat in front of a computer screen at NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Station. William was an astrophysicist, someone who studied the stars and planets. He loved his job because it allowed him to explore the unknown, even if he never left Earth himself. On this particular day, something unusual caught his attention. A faint signal had been picked up by one of the telescopes. At first, William thought it might be interference or some kind of glitch, but as he analyzed the data, he realized it wasn't random noise. It was a message. The message was strange and hard to understand at first. It wasn't written in any language William recognized, but after hours of work, he managed to decode parts of it. What he read made his heart race. The message described a planet being attacked by an enemy force. The sender begged for assistance, saying they couldn't survive much longer without help. William knew this discovery was too important to keep to himself. He immediately contacted the United Nations Space Command, UNSC, a group responsible for Earth's defense and exploration efforts. When William presented his findings to the UNSC, the room fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen as he explained what he had uncovered. Among those listening was Captain Lavra Hayes, a strong and determined leader who commanded Earth's most advanced fleet. Also present was Dr. Daniel Brooks, a scientist who specialized in studying alien life forms. Both of them understood the gravity of the situation. If Earth chose to ignore the message, countless lives could be lost. But if they decided to intervene, they would be stepping into a conflict they knew almost nothing about. The discussion went on for hours. Some argued that Earth should stay out of it. "We don't know these aliens," one officer said. "What? If this is a trap? What if we're walking into a war we can't win?" Others believed it was Earth's duty to help. "If we turn our backs now, what does that say about us?" Another officer replied, "Are we really going to let innocent beings die just because it's easier to do nothing?" In the end, the decision was made. Earth would send its fleet to assist the Valens. It wasn't just about saving lives. It was also about proving that humanity could be a force for good in the universe. Preparations began immediately. The crew of the Eclipse, Earth's flagship, worked tirelessly to get ready for the journey. The ship was massive, equipped with cutting-edge technology and powerful weapons. It was designed to protect Earth, but now it would carry the hopes of an entire alien civilization. As the launch date approached, excitement mixed with nervousness among the crew. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell, a young pilot with sharp reflexes and a quick mind, felt uneasy about the mission. He had joined the fleet to explore space, not to fight battles. "Do we really know what we're getting into?" he asked during a briefing. His question hung in the air, unanswered. No one could say for sure what awaited them when they reached Leora. Finally, the day came for the fleet to leave Earth. Crowds gathered to watch as the ships ascended into the sky, their engines roaring like thunder. Families waved goodbye to loved ones, hoping they would return safely. Back on the ground, millions more watched the launch on television, their faces filled with pride and worry. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger galaxy, and no one knew where it would lead. Weeks passed as the fleet traveled through the void of space. The journey was long and lonely, but the crew stayed focused on their mission. They trained, planned, and prepared for every possible scenario. Captain Hayes walked among them, offering encouragement and reminding them why they were there. "We're not just representing Earth," she told them. "We're showing the universe that we're capable of kindness, bravery, and strength." Eventually, the fleet arrived at Leora. The sight of the planet took everyone's breath away. It was breathtakingly beautiful, with lush green landscapes, shimmering oceans, and towering mountains. But the beauty was marred by signs of destruction. Smoke rose from burning cities, and scars marked the surface where battles had taken place. The crew felt a mix of awe and sadness as they gazed upon the damaged world below. A small shuttle detached from the eclipse and descended to the surface. On board were Captain Hayes, Dr. Brooks, and a team of officers. They landed near a Valen settlement, where they were greeted by Alira, the Valen ambassador. She was tall and graceful, with skin that glowed softly in the sunlight. Her eyes held a deep sadness, but she smiled warmly as she welcomed the humans. "Thank you for coming," Alira said, her voice gentle yet firm. "We feared no one would answer our call," Captain Hayes nodded. "We heard your message and we came as quickly as we could. Tell us what happened." Alira led them to a meeting room inside the settlement. There, she explained everything. The Krylos had attacked suddenly, catching the Valens off guard. Their forces were overwhelming and the Valens had no way to fight back. Many had already been killed or taken prisoner. The few who remained free were struggling to survive. "We are a peaceful people," Alira continued. "We have never known war. We don't know how to stop them." Dr. Brooks listened intently, fascinated by the Valens' culture. They were so different from humans, yet they shared the same desire for peace and safety. "Why are the Krylos doing this?" he asked. "What do they want?" Alira hesitated before answering. "They seek control. They believe they are superior to all other species. To them, we are weak and unworthy of existing." The weight of her words settled over the room. Captain Hayes exchanged a glance with Dr. Brooks. This was worse than they had imagined. The Krylos weren't just invaders. They were conquerors with no respect for life. "We'll help you," Captain Hayes said finally. "But we need to work together. You know your planet better than we do. Show us where the Krylos are strongest, and we'll find a way to push them back." Alira nodded gratefully. "You have our thanks. We will do whatever it takes to reclaim our home." With that, the humans and Valens began planning their next move. The fleet would provide firepower, while the Valens would offer knowledge of the terrain and enemy movements. It was a fragile alliance born out of necessity rather than trust. But for now, it was enough. As the meeting ended, Lieutenant Mitchell stood outside the settlement, staring up at the stars. He still had doubts about the mission, but he couldn't deny the determination he saw in the Valens' eyes. They were fighting for their survival, just as Earth might one day have to do. For the first time, Ryan felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could make a difference here. Little did he know, the real challenges were only beginning. The alliance between the humans and the Valens began with cautious optimism. Both sides knew that time was running out, and every moment spent planning meant another chance for the Krylos to gain ground. Captain Lavarhez worked closely with Alira, the Valen ambassador, to map out a strategy. The humans brought their advanced technology, while the Valens shared detailed knowledge of their planet's geography and the Krylos' movements. Despite their differences, they found common ground in their shared goal, survival. Alira explained that the Krylos had already taken control of several key locations on Leora. These included mining facilities rich in rare minerals, communication hubs that allowed them to coordinate attacks, and supply depots filled with resources stolen from the Valens. If the humans wanted to weaken the Krylos, they would need to strike at these targets first. Captain Hayes agreed, but she also insisted on gathering more intelligence before launching any large-scale assaults. She didn't want to risk her crew or the Valens on poorly planned missions. To gather this intelligence, Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell volunteered to lead a small team on a reconnaissance mission. He was joined by 2 other pilots, Sarah Bennett and Jake Collins, as well as Dr. Daniel Brooks, who hoped to learn more about the Krylos' biology and technology. Their destination was a mining outpost located near the edge of Valen territory. According to Alira, the outpost had been under siege for days, and the remaining Valen workers were trapped inside. If the humans could drive the Krylos away, they might not only save lives but also gain valuable insight into their enemies' tactics. The team flew in a sleek reconnaissance shuttle, designed for speed and stealth. As they approached the outpost, they saw signs of heavy fighting. Smoke billowed from damaged structures, and craters dotted the landscape. The Krylos ships hovered menacingly overhead, their dark hulls glinting in the sunlight. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, his heart pounding. This was his first real combat mission, and he couldn't afford to make a mistake. "Stay low and keep your eyes open," Ryan instructed his team over the comms. "We don't know what we're walking into." The shuttle landed a safe distance from the outpost, hidden behind a rocky ridge. The team disembarked, moving quietly through the terrain. Dr. Brooks carried a scanner, which he used to detect life forms and energy signatures. So far, the readings showed clusters of Krylos soldiers patrolling the area. They were heavily armed, with weapons far more advanced than anything Ryan had seen during training. "They're organized," Sarah whispered as they crouched behind a pile of rubble. "Look at how they move. It's like clockwork." Jake nodded grimly. "Yeah, and they're not messing around. Those guns look like they could tear through our armor in seconds." Despite the danger, the team pressed forward. They reached the outskirts of the outpost, where they spotted a group of Valens huddled together behind a collapsed wall. The Valens looked exhausted, their glowing skin dimmed by fear and exhaustion. One of them, a young male named Taran, stepped forward cautiously when he saw the humans. "You came," Taran said, his voice trembling with relief. "We thought no one would come." Ryan gave him a reassuring smile. "We're here to help. How many Krylos are inside?" Taran shook his head. "Too many. They've surrounded us. We can't fight back." Before Ryan could respond, a loud explosion echoed through the air. The ground shook beneath their feet and dust rained down from above. The Krylos had noticed the humans' presence and were preparing to attack. "Take cover!" Ryan shouted, pushing Taran and the others back behind the wall. The team scrambled to find shelter as the Krylos opened fire. Bright beams of energy streaked across the battlefield, leaving scorch marks wherever they hit. Dr. Brooks activated his scanner again, trying to pinpoint the location of the enemy forces. "There's a squad advancing from the north," he called out. "And another coming from the east." Ryan quickly formulated a plan. "Sarah, Jake, flank them from the west. I'll draw their fire while you take them out. Brooks, stay here with the Valens and keep scanning." Without hesitation, Sarah and Jake moved into position, using the ruined buildings as cover. Ryan stayed visible, firing bursts from his plasma rifle to distract the Krylos. His shots weren't enough to kill them, but they forced the enemy to focus on him rather than the rest of the team. Meanwhile, Sarah and Jake crept closer, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When they finally opened fire, the results were devastating. The Krylos hadn't expected an ambush, and their disciplined formation quickly fell apart. Several soldiers went down, their bodies collapsing in flashes of light. The survivors retreated, scrambling back toward their ships. The humans cheered as the last of the enemy disappeared into the horizon, but their victory was short-lived. As the dust settled, Ryan noticed something strange about the Krylos' behavior. They hadn't fought with the desperation of soldiers trying to hold their ground. Instead, they seemed almost casual, as if they were testing the humans' abilities. Ryan frowned, unsure what to make of it. Back at the Valen settlement, Captain Hayes listened intently as Ryan reported the mission's outcome. While she was pleased that the team had succeeded, she shared Ryan's unease. "They acted like they weren't even trying," she mused aloud. Why send such a small force to guard a critical outpost? It doesn't add up, Alira offered little comfort. The Krylos are cunning, she said. They may have anticipated your arrival and decided to use this opportunity to study you. The implications weighed heavily on everyone. If the Krylos were deliberately luring the humans into traps, then every future engagement would carry even greater risks. Still, there was no turning back now. The humans had committed themselves to this fight, and abandoning the Valens wasn't an option. Over. The next few days, the human fleet launched several more attacks against Krylos positions. Each battle followed a similar pattern. The Krylos put up minimal resistance before retreating, leaving behind only token forces. The humans celebrated these victories, but doubts lingered in the minds of the officers. Why were the Krylos pulling back so easily? What were they planning? Dr. Brooks tried to piece together answers by studying the data collected during the battles. He examined fragments of Krylos technology recovered from the battlefield, hoping to uncover clues about their origins and intentions. What he discovered shocked him. The Krylos weapons were powered by an energy source unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It was unstable, volatile, and capable of immense destruction. Brooks realized that if the Krylos managed to harness this energy fully, they could wipe out entire planets with ease. He shared his findings with Captain Hayes, who immediately called a meeting with her senior staff. This changes everything, she said, her tone grave. If the Krylos succeed in mastering this technology, they won't stop at conquering Leora. They'll come after Earth next. Lieutenant Mitchell voiced his concerns. So what do we do? Keep fighting blindly until they spring their trap? No, Hayes replied firmly. We adapt, we dig deeper, and we figure out what they're hiding. Her words resonated with the crew, but the uncertainty gnawed at them. They were thousands of light years from home, facing an enemy they barely understood. Every decision they made carried enormous consequences, not just for the Valens, but for all of humanity. As the days turned into weeks, tensions continued to rise. The humans and Valens worked side by side, but trust remained fragile. Alira assured Captain Hayes that her people were grateful for the assistance, yet there were moments when Hayes caught glimpses of hesitation in the ambassador's eyes. Was Alira withholding information? Or was she simply afraid of what might happen if the humans failed? One evening, as the fleet prepared for another mission, Ryan stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring out at the stars. He thought about the battles they had fought and the lives they had saved. But he also thought about the battles still to come and the possibility that they might lose. For the first time since arriving on Leora, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. They weren't just fighting for the Valens anymore. They were fighting for Earth, for humanity's place in the galaxy, and for the hope that peace could exist among the stars. Unbeknownst to Ryan, Captain Hayes watched him from across the room. She admired his determination, even as she worried about the toll this mission was taking on him and on everyone else. We'll get through this, she murmured softly, though no one heard her. Somehow, little did they know, the true nature of the conflict was about to be revealed, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same again. The humans and Valens continued their push against the Krylos, gaining ground with each passing day. The victories were small but significant, giving hope to both sides that they might turn the tide of the war. Yet beneath the surface of these successes, strange anomalies began to emerge, things that didn't add up. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell noticed them first during a routine patrol near one of the contested moons. The moon was barren and lifeless, its surface pockmarked with craters and jagged rocks. It seemed like an unlikely place for the Krylos to set up a base, yet reports indicated unusual energy readings coming from the area. Captain Lavra Hayes ordered Ryan and his team to investigate, hoping to uncover any hidden threats before they became problems. What they found changed everything. As they landed on the moon, the team discovered ruins buried beneath layers of dust and debris. The structures were ancient, their designs unlike anything Ryan had ever seen. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly in the dim light. Dr. Daniel Brooks immediately recognized the significance of the discovery. "These markings," he said, running his fingers over the carvings, "they're similar to ones we found in archaeological sites on Earth." The realization sent a chill through the group. If these ruins were connected to Earth's history, it meant humanity had ties to this part of the galaxy long before anyone imagined, Brooks theorized. That ancient civilizations might have traveled between stars, leaving behind traces of their existence. But what did that mean for the present? And why were the Krylos so interested in this moon? Ryan radioed the findings back to the Eclipse, where Captain Hayes listened intently. She ordered the team to document everything they could and bring samples back for further analysis. As they worked, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he kept glancing over his shoulder at the empty horizon. "Let's hurry," he told the others. "I don't like this place." Their instincts proved right when a group of Krylo soldiers suddenly appeared, emerging from hidden tunnels beneath the ruins. The humans barely had time to react before the enemy opened fire. The battle was chaotic, with beams of energy slicing through the air and ricocheting off rocky outcrops. Ryan shouted orders, directing his team to take cover while returning fire. Despite being outnumbered, they managed to hold their ground until reinforcements arrived. Back on the Eclipse, the mood was tense. The discovery of the ruins raised more questions than answers, and the ambush only deepened the mystery. Why were the Krylos guarding an abandoned site? What secrets did the ruins hold? And most importantly, how did they connect to the artifact? Illyra had mentioned the one supposedly buried beneath the Valen capital. Illyra finally revealed the truth during a private meeting with Captain Hayes. She admitted that her people guarded an ancient relic, a powerful object said to possess unimaginable energy. According to legend, the artifact had been created by a long-lost civilization capable of manipulating the fabric of space and time. Its power was immense, but also dangerous. If misused, it could destroy entire star systems. Hayes stared at Illyra, her mind racing. "Why didn't you tell us about this sooner?" she demanded. "If the Krylos are after the artifact, then this isn't just about conquering your planet. They want ultimate power." Illyra lowered her head, ashamed. "We feared telling you would make you leave. We thought you wouldn't risk your lives for something so dangerous." Hayes clenched her fist, struggling to control her anger. "You used us," she said coldly. "You let us fight without knowing the full picture. Do you realize how many lives are at stake because of your secrecy?" Illyra looked up, her eyes filled time. She understood the gravity of her actions. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "But please understand we are desperate. Our survival depends on keeping the artifact safe." Despite her apology, trust between the humans and Valens began to erode. The crew of the Eclipse debated whether they should continue helping the Valens or cut their losses and retreat. Lieutenant Mitchell argued for pulling out, believing the risks outweighed the benefits. "We can't keep fighting a war we don't fully understand," he said during a heated briefing. "Every battle brings us closer to disaster." Others disagreed, including Dr. Brooks. "If the Krylos get their hands on that artifact, it won't just be Leora that suffers," he countered. "They'll come for Earth next. We have no choice but to stop them." Captain Hayes sided with Brooks, though she shared some of Mitchell's concerns. She knew the mission had become far more complex than anyone anticipated, but abandoning the Valens wasn't an option. Humanity had stepped into this conflict, and now they had to see it through to the end. With renewed determination, the humans devised a plan to secure the artifact themselves. They couldn't rely on the Valens to protect it, not after learning how desperate they were to keep it hidden. The operation would require stealth, precision, and teamwork. A small strike team would infiltrate the Valen capital, locate the artifact, and disable it before the Krylos could reach it. Ryan reluctantly agreed to lead the mission, knowing it was their best chance to end the war. He gathered his most trusted pilots and soldiers, including Sarah Bennett and Jake Collins, along with Dr. Brooks, who insisted on coming to study the artifact firsthand. Together, they prepared for what might be the most dangerous mission of their lives. The journey to the capital was perilous. The city was heavily fortified, with Krylos patrols sweeping the streets and skies. The team moved under the cover of darkness, using cloaking devices to avoid detection. Every step felt like walking a tightrope. One wrong move could mean disaster. When they finally reached the underground chamber housing the artifact, they were awestruck by what they saw. The object floated in the center of the room, surrounded by shimmering energy fields. It pulsed with light, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Brooks approached cautiously, his scanner analyzing the artifact's composition. "It's incredible," he murmured, his voice filled with wonder. "This technology is beyond anything I've ever studied." But there was no time to marvel. The team quickly got to work, following Brooks' instructions to disable the artifact's power source. The process was delicate, requiring precise calculations and careful handling. Any mistake could trigger a catastrophic explosion. As they worked, the sound of gunfire echoed through the tunnels. The Krylos had discovered their presence and were closing in fast. Ryan and his team formed a defensive perimeter, holding off wave after wave of attackers. Bullets and energy blasts flew through the air, lighting up the chamber like a storm. Despite the chaos, Brooks stayed focused, his hands steady as he manipulated the artifact's controls. "We're almost done," he shouted, sweat dripping from his brow. "Just a few more seconds." Finally, the artifact's glow dimmed and the energy fields dissipated. Brooks let out a sigh of relief. "It's neutralized," he announced. "The power core is offline." Ryan nodded, signaling the team to fall back. They moved quickly, retracing their steps through the tunnels. Behind them, the Krylos pressed forward, their fury evident in their relentless pursuit. The humans reached the extraction point just in time, climbing aboard their shuttle as enemy fire rained down around them. As the shuttle ascended into the sky, Ryan looked back at the capital below. Flames engulfed parts of the city and smoke billowed into the atmosphere. The cost of their victory was high, but the artifact was safe for now. Still, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Krylos wouldn't give up easily, and the humans had made enemies they might never fully understand. Back on the Eclipse, Captain Hayes congratulated the team for their success, though her expression remained grim. She knew the war was far from over. The artifact's secrets had only scratched the surface of a much larger mystery, one that tied humanity, the Valens and the Krylos, together in ways no one could have predicted. For now, the fleet regrouped, tending to the wounded and repairing damaged ships. The crew tried to focus on the positives. They had saved countless lives, secured the artifact, and proven their resilience. But beneath the surface, doubts lingered. Had they made the right decision? Would their actions bring peace or ignite an even greater conflict? As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the ship's windows, Ryan found himself staring at the void, wondering what lay ahead. The universe was vast and unpredictable, and humanity's place within it felt smaller than ever. Yet, despite the uncertainty, he held on to one truth. They had faced the unknown and survived. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The victory at the Valen capital should have been a turning point in the war. The artifact was neutralized and the Krylos had been driven back, their plans thwarted for now. But instead of celebration, the humans and Valens were met with betrayal that shattered what little trust remained between them. It happened during a massive assault on the Krylos flagship. The humans and Valens had worked together to plan the attack, combining their strengths to strike a decisive blow against their common enemy. Captain Lavra Hayes led the charge, her fleet coordinating perfectly with Valen ground forces. For hours, the battle raged across space and land, with both sides suffering heavy losses. Just as it seemed the tide was turning in their favor, something unexpected occurred. Without warning, the Valens withdrew their support. Their ships disengaged from the fight, leaving the human fleet exposed and vulnerable. The Krylos seized the opportunity, launching a devastating counterattack. Ships exploded in fiery bursts and countless lives were lost in an instant. Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell watched in horror as his comrades were overwhelmed, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. "What's happening?" he shouted over the comms. "Where are the Valens?" No one answered. The silence was deafening, and the betrayal cut deeper than any weapon ever could. When the surviving ships limped back to the eclipse, anger and confusion filled the air. Captain Hayes demanded answers, storming into the meeting room where Illyra waited. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes betrayed guilt. "Why did you abandon us?" Hayes demanded, her voice trembling with fury. "We trusted you." Illyra hesitated before speaking, her words heavy with regret. "We made a deal," she admitted finally. "The Krylos offered to spare our people if we stepped aside and let them take the artifact." The room fell silent. Brooks clenched his fists, struggling to process what he had just heard. "You sold us out," he said bitterly. "After everything we've done for you, you chose to protect yourselves instead of standing with us." Illyra looked away, unable to meet their gazes. "I didn't want this," she whispered. "But I had no choice. My people were dying, and I couldn't risk losing them all." Captain Hayes took a step closer, her face inches from Illyra's. "You think this will save you? Once the Krylos have what they want, they'll turn on you. You're only delaying the inevitable." Illyra said nothing, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She knew Hayes was right, but fear had clouded her judgment. Now, the consequences of her decision weighed heavily on everyone involved. Despite the betrayal, retreat wasn't an option. The humans couldn't leave Leora not while the Krylos still posed a threat. Captain Hayes called an emergency meeting with her senior staff to discuss their next move. Morale was low, and many questioned whether continuing the fight was worth the cost. Lieutenant Mitchell argued for immediate withdrawal, believing further involvement would only lead to more casualties. "We've already lost too much," he sighed, his voice tinged with frustration. "How many more lives are we willing to sacrifice for a planet that doesn't even want us here?" Others disagreed, including Sarah Bennett. "If we leave now, the Krylos will win," she countered. "And once they control the artifact, they won't stop at Leora. They'll come for Earth next. We can't let that happen." Hayes listened to both sides, weighing the risks and rewards. In the end, she sided with Sarah. "We came here to help," she said firmly. "And even though the Valens turned their backs on us, we can't abandon this mission. Too much is at stake." With renewed resolve, the crew began preparing for one final push. They knew they couldn't rely on the Valens anymore, so they focused on finding allies among the resistance fighters who opposed their leader's betrayal. These rebels, led by Terran, the young Valen Ryan had met during the outpost rescue, were determined to reclaim their planet from both the Krylos and their own corrupt government. Together, the humans and the rebels devised a daring plan to infiltrate the Krylos stronghold and destroy the artifact once and for all. The mission was fraught with danger. The Krylos fortress was heavily guarded, its defenses impenetrable by conventional means. To succeed, the team would need to use stealth, deception, and sheer determination. Ryan volunteered to lead the operation, knowing it might be humanity's last chance to end the war. He assembled a small team consisting of Sarah, Jake Collins, Dr. Brooks, and several rebel fighters. Including TAREN. As they approached the fortress, the tension was palpable. The structure loomed ahead, its dark spires reaching toward the sky. Like claws? Searchlights swept across the landscape, and patrols moved methodically through the area. Every movement carried the risk of discovery, and every sound could mean death. Ryan kept his team close, whispering instructions and ensuring everyone stayed focused. "We go in quiet," he said. "No unnecessary noise. Stick to the shadows, and don't engage unless absolutely necessary." The team slipped past the outer defenses, using vents and maintenance tunnels to avoid detection. Inside, the fortress was a maze of corridors and chambers, each one more intimidating than the last. The air was thick with tension, and the faint hum of machinery echoed through the halls. Brooks scanned for signs of the artifact, his equipment picking up faint energy readings that grew stronger the deeper they went. Finally, they reached the chamber where the artifact was being held. It floated in the center of the room, surrounded by glowing energy fields and guarded by a squad of Krylos soldiers. Ryan signaled for the team to take positions, each member covering a different angle. When the signal came, they struck quickly. And decisively, taking down the guards before they could raise the alarm, Brooks rushed to the artifact, his hands moving rapidly as he worked to disable it. "This isn't going to be easy," he muttered, studying the complex mechanisms. "They've modified it since we last saw it." Ryan glanced nervously at the door, expecting reinforcements to arrive at any moment. "How long do you need?" he asked. 5 minutes, Brooks replied. "Maybe less if I can bypass this security protocol." The seconds ticked by agonizingly slowly. Outside, the sounds of fighting grew louder as the rebels clashed with Krylos forces, drawing attention away from the chamber. Ryan and his team held their ground, fending off occasional patrols that stumbled upon their position. Bullets whizzed past, and explosions rocked the building, but they refused to give up. Finally, Brooks gave a triumphant shout. "Got it!" he exclaimed, stepping back as the artifact's glow faded. "It's offline. Let's get out of here." The team moved quickly, retracing their steps through the fortress. Behind them, alarms blared, and the Krylos scrambled to respond. The humans and rebels fought side by side, their unity forged in the heat of battle. Despite being outnumbered, they pushed forward, determined to complete their mission. Just as they reached the exit, disaster struck. A massive explosion shook the fortress, sending debris raining down around them. The shockwave knocked several members of the team off their feet, and smoke filled the air. Ryan helped Brooks to his feet, shouting for everyone to keep moving. "We're almost there," he yelled. "Don't stop now." They burst through the doors and into the open air, sprinting toward their shuttle. Enemy fire streaked past them, narrowly missing as they dove aboard. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle lifted off just as the fortress collapsed behind them, consumed by flames. Back on the Eclipse, the crew cheered as the shuttle docked safely. The artifact was destroyed, and the Krylos' plans had been thwarted, but the victory came at a cost. Many lives had been lost, and the scars of betrayal ran deep. Still, there was a sense of pride in what they had accomplished. Against all odds, they had faced an enemy far greater than themselves and emerged victorious. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, watching as the remains of the fortress burned in the distance. She felt a mix of emotions: relief, sorrow, and determination. The war was over, but the lessons learned would stay with them forever. Humanity had proven itself capable of great courage and sacrifice, but also of resilience in the face of betrayal. As the fleet prepared to return to Earth, Ryan found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the battles they had fought, the friendships they had formed, and the sacrifices they had made. Though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: humanity's journey into the stars was just beginning, and no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The destruction of the artifact marked the end of the Krylos' reign of terror, but it did not bring peace to Leora. The Valens were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered world, grappling with the consequences of their leader's betrayal. The rebels who had fought alongside the humans now stepped forward, determined to rebuild their society on a foundation of honesty and unity. Terran, the young Valen who had risked everything to help the humans, emerged as a symbol of hope for his people on board the Eclipse. Captain Lavra Hayes gathered her crew for one final briefing before their journey home. The mood was somber, a stark contrast to the excitement that had filled the ship when they first arrived in the Andromeda Galaxy. The mission had been a success, but at a great cost. Lives had been lost, friendships tested, and trust broken. Hayes stood at the front of the room, her voice steady as she addressed her team. "We came here to help," she began, "and we did. We stopped the Krylos from obtaining the artifact, and we gave the Valens a chance to start over. But none of this was easy. We faced challenges we never imagined, and we made sacrifices that will stay with us forever." She paused, looking around the room at the faces of her crew. Some were bruised and bandaged, others visibly exhausted. Yet, despite everything they had endured, there was a sense of pride in their eyes. They had accomplished something extraordinary. "We didn't just fight for Leora," Hayes continued. "We fought for Earth, for humanity's place in the universe. What we've learned here will shape our future. It's reminded us of who we are and who we want to be." Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell sat quietly, listening to Hayes' words. He thought about the battles they had fought, the lives they had saved, and the ones they hadn't been able to protect. For so long, he had doubted whether their involvement was worth it. Now, as he looked back on everything they had achieved, he realized that sometimes doing the right thing wasn't about winning or losing, it was about standing up for what mattered, even when it was hard. Dr. Daniel Brooks shared similar reflections. The artifact had fascinated him, its power both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But more than anything, it had taught him humility. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe, and their actions had ripple effects far beyond what they could see. We're part of something bigger now, he said during a private conversation with Ryan, and that means we have a responsibility to ourselves, to others, and to the stars. As the fleet prepared to leave Leora, the humans bid farewell to their Valenolies, or at least those who remained loyal. Illyra approached Captain Hayes one last time, her expression filled with regret. I'm sorry, she said softly, for everything. Hayes nodded, her gaze unwavering. Apologies. Don't change the past, she replied. But they can shape the future. Don't make the same mistakes again. Illyra bowed her head, acknowledging the weight of Hayes' words. She knew her people had much work to do if they wanted to earn back the trust they had lost, not just from the humans, but from each other. The departure from Leora was bittersweet. As the ships ascended into the sky, the crew watched the planet grow smaller through the windows. Its beauty was undeniable, but it was also scarred by war. Smoke still rose from ruined cities, and craters marred the landscape. Yet, amidst the destruction, there were signs of hope. Rebel fighters worked tirelessly to restore order, and survivors began rebuilding their homes. The road ahead would be long, but the Valens had taken their first steps toward healing. Back on Earth, news of the fleet's return spread quickly. Crowds gathered at spaceports and military bases, eager to welcome the heroes home. Families held banners and flags, their faces lighting up as the ships descended. Reporters swarmed the area, cameras flashing as they captured every moment. The world had followed the mission closely, holding its breath as updates trickled in. Now, they celebrated the safe return of their loved ones. Captain Hayes and her crew stepped off the Eclipse to thunderous applause. Smiles broke out across their tired faces as they embraced family members and friends. For many, it was the first time they had seen their loved ones in months or even years. Tears flowed freely, mingling with laughter as stories of survival and triumph were shared, but the celebration was short-lived. The governments of Earth convened an emergency summit to discuss the implications of the mission. Leaders from around the globe listened intently as Hayes recounted the events on Leora, emphasizing the importance of unity and caution in humanity's exploration of the cosmos. We showed the universe that we're capable of kindness and bravery, she said. But we also learned that not everyone shares our values. If we want to survive among the stars, we need to be prepared for whatever comes next. Her words resonated deeply. The discovery of the artifact and the existence of the Krylos forced humanity to confront uncomfortable truths. Earth was no longer isolated. It was part of a vast and unpredictable galaxy. Decisions made today could determine its fate tomorrow. Debates raged over how best to proceed, whether to focus on defense, diplomacy, or further exploration. Some argued for increased funding for space programs, while others called for stricter regulations to prevent future conflicts. Amidst these discussions, Lieutenant Ryan Mitchell found himself struggling to adjust to life on Earth. After months of constant danger and high-stakes decisions, the quiet routine of home felt strange. He missed the camaraderie of his fellow crew members and the clarity of purpose that came with their mission. Nights were the hardest. Sleep eluded him as memories of battle replayed in his mind. Explosions echoed in his dreams, and the faces of fallen comrades haunted his thoughts. One evening, unable to shake the restlessness, Ryan drove to a nearby hill overlooking the city. From there, he could see the lights stretching endlessly into the horizon. Above, the stars twinkled faintly, distant yet familiar. He thought about the ruins on the moon, the glowing symbols that hinted at humanity's forgotten history. He thought about the artifact, its power both beautiful and dangerous. And he thought about the Valens and the Krylos, two civilizations caught in a cycle of fear and greed. A car pulled up beside him, and Sarah Bennett stepped out carrying a thermos of coffee. She handed him a cup without saying a word, sensing that he needed silence more than conversation. They sat together, sipping their drinks and staring at the sky. Finally, Ryan spoke. "Do you think we'll ever understand it all?" he asked. "The stars, the artifacts, the wars?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Probably not," she admitted, "but that's okay. Sometimes it's enough just to try." Her words stayed with him long after she left. Ryan realized that understanding wasn't always possible, but striving for it was what made humanity special. Their curiosity, their resilience, their willingness to reach for the unknown defined them. And as long as they kept looking up at the stars, they would keep moving forward. In the weeks that followed, the crew of the Eclipse slowly returned to their normal lives. Some resumed their roles within the United Nations Space Command, while others chose different paths. Dr. Brooks dedicated himself to studying the data collected during the mission, hoping to uncover more secrets about the artifact and the ancient civilization that created it. Captain Hayes became a vocal advocate for international cooperation, urging world leaders to prioritize unity over division. Despite the challenges they faced, there was a sense of optimism in the air. Humanity had taken its first real step into the wider galaxy, and though the journey had been difficult, it had also been transformative. They had proven themselves capable of greatness and of learning from their mistakes. As Ryan lay in bed one night, he gazed out his window at the stars. His mind drifted back to Leora, to the battles fought and the lives changed. He thought about Terran, Illyra, and the countless others whose fates were intertwined with his own. Though the mission was over, its impact lingered, shaping the way. He saw the world and himself. Closing his eyes, Ryan whispered a silent promise to the universe. "We'll be ready," he said. "No matter what comes next, we'll face it together." And with that he drifted off to sleep, dreaming not of war, but of the endless possibilities that lay beyond the horizon.